Hello, everybody. Hello, my name is Martin. I'm from the team here at Reedsy, and I'm here to welcome you this Tuesday to Tip and Type Tuesday. The first event we have running every single week for the month of November, for indeed November, is the Reedsy Novel Sprint, where we invite you to write 50,000 words of your manuscript in Reedsy Studio in 30 days with a chance to unlock fantastic rewards and a chance to win up to $5,000 and introductions to literary agents. Thank you everyone who's joining us live or tuning in later. This is where we get together and try to jumpstart our writing week with some mini sprints that we'll do right here. If those of you haven't done online writing sprints before in a while, just get your, however you're writing your book, if you're taking part in the challenge, you can open up the window with Reedsy Studio and write directly in there. That is my recommendation. But you can also write freehand or using whatever other device you're using if you're not taking part in that challenge. Yes, there will also be, as is the title of this event, there are going to be tips on flashbacks. It's a very common, very useful tool in storytelling. And for this one, I'll be once again digging into Tom Bromley's massive master course on how to write a novel and sharing one of the lessons specifically on flashback. Of course, the entire course is available now. You can sign up for that, but just giving you small little teasers. But thank you all of you who are joining and writing in today. I'll be answering any questions that you have in between the bits. So if you do have any questions for me, do pop them in. Otherwise, I think we are here for the purpose of knuckling down, getting some writing done. But as promised, I do have a little something for you on the topic of flashbacks. So this is taken from, of course, Tom's lesson on flashbacks from his master course on how to write a novel. We'll be dipping in with a few of these in between, and then in between these little lessons, we'll be doing 10-minute writing sprints together. All right, well, video time. Catch you in a few.
Flashbacks are a part of writing that have had a bit of a checkered history, by which I mean that there have been periods of time and groups of writers who've been quite against using them. So, for example, there was a group of writers in the UK in the mid-1990s when I first started writing who followed the dogma principles, dogma being a Danish film movement. Everyone involved signed up to a manifesto of things they couldn't do in writing. And amongst those rules was this belief that you shouldn't have flashbacks. Everything should be told in the here and now and in the moment for the writing to be genuine and true. Now, I don't subscribe to that belief myself. I think there's plenty of places in writing where a flashback can be really useful to bring in. But I think it's important to think about how you use them and the effect that flashbacks have on the main narrative if you're going to put them into your storytelling. The first thing to remember with flashbacks is that they have this effect of pausing the main story. If you are writing a chapter or a scene, it is the present-day narrative that gives a novel its forward momentum. I think that's really important to remember. And part of that is from the way that flashbacks work. Part of it too is that they offer detail about character often, rather than about plot. So quite often with flashback, you'll find you're fleshing out a bit of backstory, flashback story as it were, to give the reader a wider knowledge of who the character is that they're reading about. It tends to be less usual, I think, for flashback to be about plot. So partly because they're about character rather than plot, that slows the story down. But also, it takes you away from the main narrative, that present-day narrative, and that, essentially, presses pause on the book as it is going forwards. Because of that, the longer the flashback, the longer the pause. So thinking about how long the flashback is in relation to the material is really important. And if the flashback is too long, and there's not enough happening in the present, then that balances out and doesn't work in keeping the reader's attention as it should. I would say, as a general rule, to think about the flash in flashback. A flash of flashback works well to keep a story moving. I think flashback can be a really effective way of showing a bit of detail. So sometimes, rather than telling the reader information, if you can show a specific thing and a small little scene, then that is more effective than summary. But keeping those flashbacks short and keeping them almost like flash fiction, works well in keeping things moving forwards. The other thing I would say to think about with flashbacks is to think about the links as well. So how those elements of flashback tie into the main narrative that you're telling as it's moving forwards.
Okay, and that is the first little bit. Hopefully, it's a nice little teaser for what's coming next. Tom will be going into a bit more detail, showing examples of some of the short flashbacks, the flashier flashbacks, and then giving some examples of longer ones and how those link in. Thank you for putting your questions in there. I'm going to answer them probably closer to the end when hopefully Tom will have answered some of the questions you are likely to ask, but otherwise we'll save those so we're running on the same page. Okay, so based off of feedback from last time, I've put together a list of music that I think should appeal to some folks. Something jazzy, something classical, some of it calm, not too that doesn't stick out too much. But if you have any requests for type of music, do pop them into the thing. I'll see if I can pull them up for the third one we have today. Okay, so for this one, everyone get whatever writing device or writing software they're going to use out. I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and we're going to run ourselves a short writing break, writing sprint then. All right, everybody, here's your music. I'll see you in a sec. Okay, and that brings us to the end of our first 10-minute sprint. How was it for everyone? And always remember, the first sprint isn't the same for everybody. Some people come in fresh and ready to go, but other folks need a little bit of time to warm up. So no matter what your word count was for that one, well done. But if you do want to share, do feel free to put it in the comments. And while you're at it, do consider giving this video a thumbs up, a like, and even subscribe to the channel. Any bits of those always will help us. Yes, let me know how it's gone. Nikki E1W3T295 for you. Nikki, do you live in Wapping? Never mind. Don't answer that one if you don't want. Ringcat wrote 339 words in a new section. Fantastic. This is all good stuff. Was it? Ringcat had a Google Limestone. Kimberly Holman added 215 during that sprint. Well done, well done. And Shaky Stacy 305. That's great stuff. Any amount is good. But yeah, when you see it in those sort of mid-hundreds, that's all very, very good. Hey, Samantha, slow going, but it will pick up in the next sprint, no doubt, as you say. Simply Anna, pretty good, 210 for you. Joe Freitag's 191. Took a long time to get out of bed to get your laptop, but Lou made 124. You're setting the benchmark there, the baseline, and then you can only help but smash it later. Nikki says, no, just random numbers. It was just incredibly close to my old postcode. Geminui, 288 words, well into their 10,000 word count. Fantastic. Good. We're going to have a couple of more of those later on. If you do have any requests for type of music, I will do my best to find royalty-free versions of that and bring it on there. Rocks with Dreams, 60 count. Hey, 60 is not nothing. 60 is in fact infinitely more than nothing. So well done with getting that one started. Okay, well, before we go on to the next one, as promised, we are going to have our next little section on flashbacks. In this one, Tom's going to dive into some examples of shorter flashbacks. Okay, let's see this.
What we're going to do today is look at a few extracts where we have flashback at different lengths. I'll explain how they work and the effects on the writing as a result. The first one we're going to look at is from Natasha Brown's Assembly. We looked at this the other day, where we were looking at the balance between scene and summary. And this is the start of the extract, if you remember, of the conversation between our protagonist and her co-worker, Rachel. They're in the coffee place where they work, and we're switching in the scene between details about what's happening in the present and the protagonist thinking a little bit more widely about Rachel, this co-worker who's become a friend. And as the scene goes on, we have this lovely little detail of flashback. She laughed, brushing her hands together. So we're in the present here, and then we switch. Despite the cynicism, I knew it got to her. During our pre-work workout a few weeks back, I'd seen her running on the treadmill beside me fast, too fast, panting hard, smacking the track with her New Balance soled feet, her angled elbows swinging wildly, sprinting, until she wasn't. Having leapt abruptly and landed on the plastic ledges either side of the whizzing track, her torso collapsed against the control panel. Afterwards, we regrouped as usual outside the changing room, her composure restored, her still damp hair appearing a darker blonde. We took the stairs to the mezzanine floor to caffeinate, bodies still flushed from the activity. Now, this is a really lovely detail about this character Rachel, and it'd be quite easy, as in fact the author has done on the previous pages, to tell the reader something about this character through her thoughts. But instead, she's decided to show this information through a little vignette. It's less than a paragraph long, but that's enough to give you a bit more detail about the character. Lengthwise, it's like a mini scene, and I think that works extremely effectively in the text there. This next example is from Fault Lines by Emily Atami, and this is the scene where our protagonist Mizuki sees this character Kiyoshi for the first time, and she's meeting another person, Lawrence, who she works with. And here again, the flashback detail is within the paragraph. I totally lost track of the time, because Lawrence and I get involved in a discussion about old British television programmes. When I was in New York, Cassie and I used to watch all the British shows we could get our hands on, because Cassie was obsessed with the accents, and I found the swearing therapeutic and the vocabulary hilarious. What an absolute fucking farce, I'd mutter to myself. It really is the dog's bollocks. While Cassie tried out the incomprehensible tongue twisters of Liverpudlian and Billy Connolly's Scottish, having mastered Queen's English long ago. I have no idea if any of it represented how people speak in real life, but just as I'm beginning to grill Lawrence about it, I notice that as usual I'm late. So here we get into the scene from the present, into the conversation where we have this flashback detail, and then we get out of it again. I notice that as usual I'm late. So it's less than a paragraph of flashback, but again, it's a really nice little bit of detail. It's less of an individual scene, this flashback. It's more flashes and moments. But again, I think it adds more depth to the scene. It fleshes things out a little bit. And actually here, it's also working as displacement. So just above this flashback, we've had this single line. That was the first time I met Kiyoshi. So here is where our character is meeting the person who is going to be key in the book. But having given the reader that information, the author is slowing things down and building it back up to that point. Having that flashback in there and creating this anticipation helps in that regard. Now sometimes the flashbacks balance out slightly differently. This next example is from a book called Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. Here, brother and sister, Byron and Benny, are going to see a lawyer about the death of their mother. And as you can see here where we've highlighted, the stuff that's happening in the present is actually pretty short. Their mother has left them a message, the lawyer says. The lawyer's name is Mr. Mitch. He's talking to Byron and Benny as though he's known them all their lives, but Byron can only recall meeting him one other time. Here, we then go back into the time when Byron's met this person before. So it's giving us backstory and background about the previous meeting and what happened there. It's a really good scene, but it means as a result that the present day stuff is actually more limited here and that the focus and the bulk of the scene is in the past. Speed-wise, this is a little bit slower as a result. I think it works in the context of the book and the chapters surrounding it, but if the whole book was like this, I think that could be difficult. It would mean there's not enough happening in the present and the meat of the book was all happening in the past, which would slow things down.
Cool. And that is number 2. And I've actually got that book, Black Cake, he talks of here, off the back of Tom's course. I went and bought it and read it, and it is very good indeed. And indeed, it is a book that is heavily steeped in action happening in the past. So it is a good one to draw on for different uses of flashback. Okay, so with that in mind, but also free your mind, with nothing in mind, it is time we hit up our second mini writing sprint of the day. And this one is another 10-minute one. So, pencils up, keyboards out, everyone. Let's do 10 minutes, and I'll see you at the back end of that. Okay, and that brings us to the end of sprint number 2. Let us know how that was for you in the chat box. I know everyone was feverishly focused in on what they were doing, but yes, I hope you enjoyed the background music then, and maybe you were even digging into a flashback in the scene you were writing. If that was the case, let us know. But yes, I'm really pleased you can all join us for this one. To give you an idea of what we have coming up next, let me share this. For indeed, later this week, tomorrow, we have one on Getting Unstuck. We have editor and lecturer Ross Angelella, who's also a novelist, going to come in and talk to us about getting stuck within your rut, which a lot of us may be sort of feeling at this point in the month. I sent out an email earlier today saying that was at 3 p.m. Eastern. I got that one slightly wrong. Ross couldn't make it for then, but he can make it for 2. So it should be an hour earlier than it's listed on this page. But otherwise, the listings everywhere else on Reedsy and on YouTube should be accurate for us. Now on Friday, we have a a Friday writing happy hour. We're bringing on previous guests and novelist Noah Charney, who's also a art historian, another lecturer. He'll be talking to us a bit about his processes, writing habits, and we'll be getting a sprint or 2 done there. And then next week's Tip and Type Tuesday is about raising the stakes. For indeed, if we're going to push a reader through our story into the final act, we better be raising the stakes all along there to make it certain that it's worthwhile to continue going. So, let's see where we were. Samantha got 277 that time. Simply Anna says didn't get too much farther, but certainly got somewhere. Nikki did 328. Tiny one sentence flashback. Oh, that's a good one. Using a little bit of Tom's new tip. Joe did 84 that time. Hey, that's 84 you hadn't had before. Gamer Girl done 332. Winzani 142. Remember, yeah, fantastic. So pleased to see that progress there. And of course, again, it's not all about the numbers and the word count. It's about sitting down and making sure that some writing happens today. Little Saga did 221, but they resolved a block. So very pleased there. Very pleased for you. Okay, this brings us, let's do our very last visit to Tom Corner. Where he's going to be talking about flashbacks, slightly longer flashbacks. This is the final one of the day. Remember, this comes from his full course on how to write a novel. If this interests you, do drop me an email or head to the link below to see what that course is all about. But yes, here you go. I'll catch you at the end of this.
A couple more examples to show you where the flashbacks are getting a little bit longer. This next extract is from The History of Wolves by Emily Fridland. So we looked at this book when we looked at the topic of revealing information. And the opening page here has our protagonist thinking about this young boy, Paul, who we then learn has died. So we get a short scene in the here and now and what she's thinking about at the moment. And then, as we saw, the detail goes back into the past. Before Paul, I'd known just one person who'd gone from living to dead. He was Mr. Adler, my 8th grade history teacher. And then we get a couple of pages all about the death of Mr. Adler, with no mention of Paul at all. So it's not about revealing story here. I think it's more about revealing something of the character in terms of the character's reactions to what's going on. And it's more about creating a mood, a sense of foreboding. We don't know how Paul died, but by discussing this other shocking death, the assumption is there's some kind of comparison. Its inclusion here means that we are pausing the present. The present-day story, in fact, hasn't really started yet. We're all back into this character's past with the detail here. And again, as an overall way of telling, it's not a balance that I would recommend. I would be looking at having the shift the other way around, having more emphasis on what's happening in the present day. But for an individual section, as in this novel, it works very well. Sometimes you will have a story where the flashback is inbuilt, and I always think a good example of this is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. If you've read the book, you'll know that the opening section is in alternate chapters between Nick, the husband, and Amy, the wife. But the first section in this is back and forth, where the Nick chapters are stuff happening in the present day, and the Amy chapters are flashback and things happening in the past. This shift works really well as a technique. The emphasis of the storytelling is in the Nick chapters. As the book goes on and the Amy chapters come up to the present day, then there is added momentum to the telling as a result. Then the story pulls in both directions at the same time. But I would say here that the Nick stuff is doing more of the storytelling and the Amy chapters is doing more of the character stuff. And I just wanted to show you this, which is the contents of the first part of the book. And as you can see from this summary, the Nick stuff is all in the present and the Amy stuff is all in the past. So you've got this balance of 50-50 between the two. It's balanced quite neatly, and there's something very strong in terms of the writing and how these two strands fit together. That's something we're going to look at again later on in the course. So flashbacking then can be a really useful element in your plotting, but do think about the how and the how much that you use it. My advice would be to try and stick to keeping those moments short where possible, so you aren't disrupting the forward momentum the present day offers to keep the plot ticking forward.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So there you have it. His advice on flashbacks. It can be used, as always. They can be used ingeniously. They can be used poorly. As new writers, it could be something that you should give yourself as a challenge to avoid doing too many flashbacks, or as he said, keeping them fairly short. Because I don't know. The thing I have sometimes is that there are certain books where there are some bits that you always like more than the others. Very often there'll be like, if it's inbuilt like this, I want to have the stuff that is the sort of present narrative, the stuff that has a bit of momentum. And as he says, whenever it flashes back to something, it's just me sort of getting delayed of finding out what's happening next, which can be frustrating. And so the idea of quick flashbacks, sometimes built within to the scenes themselves, can be as effective as it needs to be, without sort of having to go back and give entire scenes back there. Okay, so let's see. We've got some questions here. Lou says, "I've told a couple of my characters flashbacks in dreams. Is this odd? I guess. Well, what is the intended effect of it being in a dream? I suppose you could have." Some of your characters' flashbacks could be in a daydream, something happening in the present that reminds them of something. I think that was the example given there. If it happens in a dream, then the reader is, of course, asked to wonder, is this actually what happened in the past, or is this employing some sort of dreamlike logic? And nobody ever dreams of something exactly as they happen. So you have to sort of add in that extra unreliability element. And remember, I think people's dreams aren't always as interesting as they think they might be. If it's something that perhaps is more tied into what's happening in the present, that could be a bit more interesting because it feels like it has some sort of, is part of that narrative momentum. If it's happening in the dreams, you're almost telling your reader, and what does this mean? You probably won't find out until later, and it could be a momentum killer there. Adventures with Time, planning to include a double flashback in the novel. That is, within a flashback, have a flashback to an earlier scene. Will that work? As with all of these, it's all in the execution. But you have to ask yourself, well, what is the purpose of that? I think in an early one of these, I talked about um, Cloud Atlas, David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas, a book that sort of stops its narrative and jumps to new ones, and it does sort of make people wonder exactly why this is happening. So what is the purpose of your flashback within a flashback? If that is happening, as Tom says, you're sort of stopping the narrative momentum in your main story, going into your flashback, and then potentially stopping the narrative momentum there. And then is everything going to basically sort of accumulate speed and knock it on like the end of Inception or something, or will this just be something that will have your reader sort of checking to see how many more pages is left there? If a character remembers scenes from the past, is that a flashback? I think that is very much a flashback. If a character remembers and tells, or if the narrator, for example, remembers and tells something that happens in the past, very much a flashback there. Cool. Gamer Girl says flashback or prologue. Well, I don't know. Like they are very different things. Prologues are almost sometimes, a tone piece that starts a book, or a piece of information about the world of the book that the author feels that the reader needs to know before things start. But I think very much you can give the reader a little bit of credit. The first scene, they don't need to know exactly what is happening in this world. Some of the best books start with sort of isolated action, gets you to know basically who the character is, without sort of needing to give their backstory, what they want, what they like, how they react in a certain situation. And as the story develops, you can then go back in and reveal more about that world. The reader will be patient with you so long as within the immediate action of the story, things are happening and there are stakes, and they care. So, yes. Let's see. Cool. Let's have time for just one more. Have one more sprint. Got one more bit of music lined up. As mentioned, we've got a few more things happening this week. I'll be sticking around for a question or two at the end of this one. But let's set it up. One more, and away we go. Okay, and that was the last of our writing sprints. How's that for us? Do we feel the momentum building throughout the session, or oh yeah, are we sort of petering out? Because there's no bad thing to give yourself a little bit of a break in between the writing sessions, just to sort of clear the machinery, as it were. But yes, I'll be here for a few more minutes if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, do tune in to tomorrow's Wednesday's. Sorry, messing that one up already. To tomorrow's Wednesday Writers Club. It's all about getting unstuck. Indeed, if you found that last one a bit of a slog, perhaps what our presenter Ross Angelella will have to share will help you there. But yes, Nikki did about 240 that time. Excellent, excellent. Good to see. Yeah, the creator Star 17 can feel some tiredness building. It can be fairly intense, even taking a few minutes break between these sprints. It can be tiring. As I mentioned at the start of this whole planning process, it's about finding what sort of works for you. Some people can work in intense hour-long blitzes. Some people are best splitting things up into 15, 20 minutes chunks, or even a little bit less. Samantha, 343, and broke the 20,000 word mark on the manuscript. Congratulations. That's 40% there. Well done. Gamer Girl, 400. Thanks to everyone for the words and the company. Nikki says had fewer words that time because they're a pantser. Very possible. Uh, not a bad thing. Joe Freitag, 167 that time. Lou did 182, below their average, but they are convalescing. Fenris Fire, almost 300. Well done. Yeah, really good to see all those. And yes, indeed, feel better, Lou. I want to thank everyone here for joining me on this Monday, Tuesday evening for me. Could be an afternoon or a Monday for anyone else. So do tune in for the rest of our events this week. Until then, stay writing, stay well, and have fun with it. See you soon.